everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Johanna and I make videos about Japanese language schools, my life in Japan, life in a Japanese university, etc, etc. Going to a Japanese language school is a really fun experience. You get to study the language, you get to experience Japan and the culture, but as with everything, all good things come to an end, and before you know it, it's time for you to graduate and figure out your next step. After all, most students don't enroll in a Japanese language school just for the experience, but they do it so they can use Japanese as a tool to further study in Japan, to use Japanese at their work, or even to work in Japan. So, what actually happens after language school? Now, the goal of this video is to show you guys different ways of how people continue on after language school, explain how the school and teachers will or can help you with your next step, and give some tips on what you might have to think about before entering your language school and before graduating your language school. So, without further ado, let's get started! Now, one of the most common ways for Japanese language school students to continue on with their journey after graduation is vocational schools. A vocational school program generally spans over 2 years, and you get to study something specific in order to find a job in Japan. In Japan, going to university and getting a bachelor's degree will give you the best opportunities to find a good job, but if you have something specific you're interested in and don't want to spend 4 years on studying, you can enter into a vocational school and study something specific that you can work with later on in Japan. Compared to universities, vocational schools are cheaper, shorter, and easier to get into. Also, if you have something specific you're interested in, like animating, cooking, agriculture, or tourism, going to a vocational school might be more beneficial for you. You will most likely learn everything that's necessary for you to work in Japan in that specific field within 2 years. Personally, I have friends from my language school who enrolled in a vocational school to study design, animating, cooking, and tourism. If you need guidance in finding a school or a program that fits you and what you want to study, you can just ask your school or your teachers and they will help you with both finding a school and the application process as well. Now, the next step you can take after graduating from your Japanese language school is going to a university. Getting into university is generally harder than getting into a vocational school, but having a bachelor's degree will generally give you better opportunities to find a good job here in Japan. That is also the main reason why I chose to enroll in a university here in Japan. As far as I know, most companies in Japan are legally not allowed to employ you if you don't have a bachelor's degree or a vocational school degree, if you don't have a lot of experience working in a specific field that you want to work in Japan. Getting into university definitely requires you to have a higher level of Japanese language skills, and most universities ask for at least N2, and you also have to take another exam called the EJU, which I kind of made a video about before, so I'm going to put it up here so you can check that out as well. A bachelor's degree in Japan generally spans over 4 years, with the 4th year mainly being focused on finding a job rather than studying. Going to a university in Japan, you get to experience uni life with clubs, festivals, a lot of school activities, which you don't get to experience in a vocational school. But if you do know what you want to work with in the future and it is something that you could study in a vocational school, that might be a better option for you since it is cheaper and shorter than going to university. As with vocational schools, your teachers and school will help you in finding a good university that fits you with the program that will suit you, and will also help you with the applications, and in most cases at least give you advice on how to prepare for the EJU test. Another option for you if you already have a bachelor's degree is to get a master's degree here in Japan. Now, this is not as common, and I'm actually not sure if I know anyone from my language school who went on to get a bachelor's degree, so I don't have a lot of information about that. I'm sure Google will tell you more if you're interested in that, but that is also something you could do after language school. Another option for you after you graduate language school is to find a job. If you already have at least a bachelor's degree or 5 to 10 years of work experience in a specific field that you want to work in here in Japan, you can apply for a Japanese company that will sponsor you with a work visa. I asked a friend from my language school who got employed by a Japanese company, and she said that her good grades, her good attendance at language school, her passing N1, and also using formal language when contacting and talking with the company probably helped her a lot in getting the job that she got. If you want to work in an international company here in Japan, the process might look a little different, but I'm afraid I don't know enough about that to give you any proper information, so Google is your friend. My teachers at my language school helped students who wanted to find a job by giving information about job fairs, writing recommendation letters if necessary, and helping prepare them for the job interviews. Now, of course, another option for you is to not stay in Japan and go back to your own country again. Some students enroll in a Japanese language school because they want to experience the culture, the country, and learn the language, and intend from start to return to their countries after graduating. Some people just come on exchange programs from their universities in their own countries, and some people just want to use Japanese to work in a company in their own country. And others just don't manage to find a job in Japan or don't manage to continue studying as they planned and are forced to return back to the countries even though they actually want to stay in Japan. Well, some people enroll in a Japanese language school with the intention of staying in Japan but change their mind halfway and decide to return to their countries after the program finishes. I have seen it all. Now, lastly, this is kind of half joke, half serious, but of course, another way for you to stay in Japan after you graduate is to get married. I really don't know too much about this, but I do know of some people who got married right before graduation or right after graduating from their language school. If you get married to a Japanese citizen, you get a spouse visa, which allows you to stay and live in Japan without having to work or having to study. And as far as I know, you can work up to 28 hours a week, just as with the student visa. I think this goes without saying, but marrying just for a visa is obviously not a good idea and usually ends badly, so don't count on this visa. But if you happen to meet that special person here, good for you! So that is about all the ways that people continued on after graduating language school as far as I know. There might be other and more uncommon ways, but I don't really know about that, and I think you would do better in just Googling that instead. So lastly, I want to give you some tips and advice on what you might have to keep in mind before enrolling in your Japanese language school and what you might have to keep in mind and prepare before graduating. My first advice is to have a plan on what you want to do after graduating, even before you enroll in your language school. I speak from personal experience when I say that things get unnecessarily complicated and stressful if you start thinking about your next step when you don't have that much time left in your language school. If you have a plan or a dream when you enroll, make sure to start asking teachers for advice early on so you have lots of time to prepare and gather information. If you want to work in Japan, it might be smart to start mingling around with people in the field that you want to work in to create contacts that might be useful for you when it's time to actually look for a job. And if you want to go to Japanese university, try to find information about different schools and qualifications so you have lots of time to prepare for all of the tests and applications. So my next advice for you has to do with your student visa. Most language school programs finish in early March, but if you enrolled in April, your student visa will most likely last until summer. What you need to be careful about though is that your eligibility to work part-time disappears when you graduate from your language school, and so if you plan to work part-time for a few months while figuring out your next step or waiting for your next school or work to start, you cannot do this, it's not possible, and you're not allowed to work after you graduate. I had classmates in my language school that planned to do exactly this and got into trouble because they found out about this just a few months before graduating, and so they didn't have a lot of time to prepare financially for that. My last tip for you in this video is that if you did not manage to find a job and get a work visa before graduating from your Japanese language school, there is a visa you can apply for that will give you 6 months to find a job while still staying in Japan. As far as I've heard, this visa is not that hard to get, and it does give you more time to find a job if you did not manage to do that before graduating. So that's really good. Okay, that is all for today's video. I hope you found this video helpful and that it gave you some tips and advice on things to think about to prepare before graduating from your language school. And I hope you're all doing well in these times. I'm getting pretty bored of life in quarantine. My university is actually starting back again in like 2.5 weeks, and we're gonna have like online classes, which is gonna be a new adventure. But yeah, I'm just excited that some things are happening again. My hair is also getting really long and I want to go get it cut, but I'm not really sure if that's the best thing to do at the moment, so I think I'm just gonna stay inside. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to know more about life in Japan and what it's like going to Japanese language school and a Japanese university, make sure to subscribe to my channel here on YouTube, and also go over and follow me on my Instagram, where I post almost daily about my life and just whatever I'm up to here in Japan. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye!